Hello and welcome to our final session of CPAC Summer School, Advising the District, Understanding Data. Today, we're going to talk all about the role of the CPAC in its statutory role of being an advisor to the school committee and the school district. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. What does advising the district mean? How CPACs may use data, especially when they are in an advisory role. We'll go into understanding types of data, 8 steps to planning to use and review data, and then how to use data effectively in presentations. And last of all, we'll discover all the wonderful places where you can find data about school districts here in Massachusetts. So under the law here in Massachusetts, the CPACs have a specific role, which is to advise the district on matters that pertain to the education and safety of students with disabilities. So I think that's kind of a broad category there, like what does matters really mean? And in the live session, there was lots of sharing in the chat, and it really turned out that CPACs, anything that affects students with disabilities, the school environment, the culture, those are all matters that matter to the CPAC. So it is a broad definition, and the CPACs can really be in an advisory role on lots of different topics. Your advisory role may look different in all different communities due to the size, the structure of the community. Some have school boards, some are run by, in a city, the school board is chaired by the mayor. So it depends really on the size and the scope of your community and how that role will look. Who should CPACs be working with? Many players within the school and greater community. The administrator of special education is someone that the CPAC might meet regularly with, and then therefore pass on some concerns and advice and talk about issues. It may raise up to the superintendent level. The CPAC is structured to be an advisor to the school committee, so there should be some type of formal presentation or getting on the school committee calendar at least once per year. There may be other school officials that the CPAC is working with to get to fulfill their role. And we also hope that they start to engage with others within the school community, advising them of the role of the CPAC and getting that data and information. So it could be other school PTOs, PTAs, other parent groups, the site councils, principals, other players within the school. And then it's very important for the CPAC to also be engaged in the local community. That might mean making sure that the select board or any elected leaders are aware of the CPAC and their role, meeting with town officials when appropriate, heads of town departments, for example, Board of Health or the Disability Commission, the Town Recreation Department, wherever it sees fit. Because when you inform members of your school and local community about the purpose, the value, and the function of CPACs, it gets that critical support for your work, for your activities, and then helps you sustain your efforts through the long term because you've built up those partnerships, those relationships. There's lots of ways to share information, and I'm going to talk about some of the formats here. I think the CPAC should always have an internal advisory meeting so people understand what the role is, maybe gather some support around a certain issue, or at least advise your members of what is coming up and what you're talking about with school officials. We talked about those meetings with district personnel, that's building those trusting relationships on a regular basis. And that way, things don't fall by the wayside. You're meeting regularly and addressing issues. You can make somewhat of a formal presentation to the school committee. That could be an oral report or say a PowerPoint presentation. You can always submit, written kind of testimony or reports to the school committee, and some CPACs write actually an annual report and share it around so that they document what they've accomplished or what they've been addressing during any given school year. Some CPACs, create some kind of a flyer or brochure about what they're all about. What is a CPAC? Question and answer, some information about that. And that's sharing information. That's ultimately creating, information about your advisory role, and who you are and what you do. When you are sharing information, you are going to share different things. Actually, maybe some specific data on a topic or things that you've gathered, information that you've gathered, and put it into some kind of a data format. It could be more story-driven, so experiences of families, their concerns, their perspectives. So in a little less formal type of structure. I always hope that CPACs talk about what's working well in the district, so the district will continue to support it and fund it and kind of build on things that are working well. And I think ideas are always welcome, especially if they're problem-solving ideas, to bring ideas to the table. So there's lots of not only ways and formats so you can share the information, but lots of different kinds of information that you can share. So we did a little bit of brainstorm in the live session of like different ways where the CPAC could use data to support your advisory role, and shared information in the chat. And it went, across the board of all different ways of, the CPAC having, interesting perspective, and weighing in and coming in to inform about maybe curriculum changes or staffing changes or budgeting. So there's lots of areas where the CPAC could have impact and exercise its advisory role. So one of the things that CPACs may share is data, and getting a sense of what data is, because schools speak data and track a lot of data. So being comfortable with data is something that I hope CPACs, start to move forward on. Data is just factual information, and you can use it in lots of different ways. And we're hoping that it's used to improve systems, to enlighten, what's happening. But one thing is it must be reliable, accurate, and true, and it must be valid. It's measuring what it claims to be measure, and accessible so that people can really understand it. A lot of CPACs use surveys to collect information and data. So you just want to make sure that you're sharing all of the information in your methodology and your numbers, so that people can rely on it, because data will ultimately help people reach that top of the triangle of wisdom, having more information about any given issue. There are different forms of data, so that you might just be familiar with this. Quantitative is all about quantities. That's the numbers thing. They can be measured and written down. It answers how much, how often. And a lot of times those could be just test scores, attendance rates, graduation rates, grades. Those are measurements. Qualitative data goes a little bit dealing around the quality of an issue, data that can maybe be observed. It answers why or maybe how something happened. And that's where family stories and perspectives come in. It could be samples of students' work or other types of qualitative kind of perspectives. There are several stages of how you would use data well, and you can see it's kind of a circle, which means that you need to revisit and kind of reinform. So I'll read this because it's a little blurry. CPAC should pretty much think about how they want to plan and prepare to be able to use data, then ultimately collect that data. Once you have the data, you have to organize it and analyze it and think about it. You may develop hypothesis or make recommendations based on that data that might go into an oral or written report. Using that data with the district to create action plans, to improve, to change, to investigate, lots of reasons why you might want to act on some of this information that you're gathering and learning about. And then ultimately, as a result of the actions, hopefully there are some results. And you have to kind of display or celebrate or understand the results of your actions. But this concept is a continuous monitoring progress. So any action, you want to revisit it. You want to look at it again. Was this effective over time? Does it need more data, more information to inform further changes? So data is used to create a process where you can use it effectively for change or improvements. One of the things that I think CPACs struggle with is the questioning of the data, because we're all not data experts, we're parent leaders. So it might be saying, well, are these findings statistically significant? And that might come into play when you have 1,000 families on IEPs and only 20 people answer a survey or provide data. So just leveraging what you have to the best effect, and understanding that you might need to go out and get more responses, more data, more information, because there may be challenges to your data. Do you have enough data, the right data to be able to be making any conclusions? I think it's a difficult process. The idea of having a report and when you're presenting that data is, go back to the thought process of it should be reliable and accurate and accessible, because you want it to be fair. And so providing the background, the purpose, why you collected this data, and then ultimately the CPAC needs to decide how the data will be shared. I think it'd be great if you can come together with the school district and present data to the school committee to have those rich conversations about issues that are happening. When you're planning for that presentation, think about who your audience is and gear it toward the audience. Maybe, you just want to, what's the story you want to tell? What's the purpose of your presentation of information? Why are you, sitting with that advisory hat on? And then if you're using data, can that data ultimately connect to the bigger goals of the district? That's where that tie-in might be really nice, because we know the school committee sets annual goals for improvement in the district. There's a couple of links here to help you kind of create that good presentation, because data alone is not enough. It's all about how it's presented, and to make it easily understandable and reflective of the questions that people might ask. So now we get to the part of where do we find all of this data on our district to inform us as a CPAC in our work, but also to kind of shape and see how we compare with other districts. How are we doing? Where's that touchstone? So DESE, our Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, has a school and district profile page where you can search by region and get to your school district by name. There's a district report card. It has lots of information, student demographics, identifying numbers and percentages of students with disabilities, enrollment data. There's a DART trends feature where you can actually compare your district with a similar size or demographic district. Just note when you go to these profile pages, the data is about 1 to 2 years behind. Right now, this fall, DESE will ask districts to submit by, I think it's the end of October, last year's data. So it's always at least 1 year behind. And it's hard to get current data on the district, on the DESE websites. They have statewide reports. You'll see it at the top of that district profile page, under student enrollment and indicators, you can get lots of different kind of breakout reports around average class size for your district, race, gender, language, students with disabilities, graduation and dropout rates, all of the school placement areas, how many students are homeschooled, discipline reports, including restraints, maybe attendance, days missed. There's lots of information that might inform you about an issue that you're researching or want to address within the school district. And having, you can do it by year, and so you can kind of look at maybe trends over time also. One of the most important and effective charts is the enrollment of students with disabilities by school district. And so you can open up this very long Excel sheet, but across the top, it'll list all of the state-defined disability types. And the most current school year is fiscal year 2024. And you'll see all of the students who are in your district that were classified as having autism or specific learning disability or other health impairment or being blind. And so it helps the CPAC understand the makeup of the district, how many programs are needed to meet the needs of the students within the district, but also it should help the CPAC understand the makeup of the membership that should be representative of the disability types within the district. So if there's nobody, in your CPAC community that has a child with a specific learning disability, and that's the largest category in your community, then maybe you need to do some outreach to make sure that that voice is part of the discussion at the CPAC level. DESE has a policy brief that explores data that can help you if this is the first time you're looking at educational data and trying to make a sense of all of it. It has 3 sections, even though it is from 2020. It's not a bad kind of summary. It speaks also to trends over the last decade, shows how Massachusetts is one of the higher identifying states for special education in the country. And it introduces RADAR, and my next slide's on RADAR, which is a new tool that's available on the DESE website in terms of comparative understanding of how districts are spending money. And so they also have some data to regional vocational districts. This is the link to the RADAR reports, the resource allocation and district action reports. This is where you can compare your spending and staffing to other districts, see district trends over, I think it's a 5-year period. They allow you to look at that. And you can investigate, a lot of staffing, per pupil spending, special education. When you look at these reports, especially if you're looking for change over time, over several years, note that the COVID years may have an impact on the data. It's probably a little skewed because the world was different during COVID time, and just look at that with a kind of a clear eye that that may not be accurate data to compare with current times. One other last place to find some interesting data is around transportation. And what happened was there was DESE had a vendor that pulled all the information from all the districts where they were sending students to out-of-district placements or collaboratives. And so the goal was to save on transportation costs by having 2 or 3 neighboring districts pool together to fund a van, maybe to go to one of the Chapter 766 schools. And so what's interesting is you can go into this website, choose all districts or an individual district, and then choose a program and see how many students from your school district are attending one of these programs. So it gives you a better sense of where maybe some of the students are attending out-of-district placements within your district. It's just a different way, a different snapshot of looking at data and information about placements in your district. So during the last session, I asked you to put in the chat what reports you would be interested in, and here's some specific links to those reports. So someone wanted staffing retention rates around special education in Paris. Well, we don't really have that. We have superintendent, principal, and all teachers. So you can see your staffing retention rates for those positions in that report. Someone was asking about all the different educational environments, thinking about inclusion. That's the federal indicator 5. Districts have to report on that, but our federal government doesn't ask about partial inclusion, which is an option here in Massachusetts. So you look at that and you'll look at all the data, but that piece is missing. And your district may be able to supply some of this information. They wanted, where children were going, a number of out-of-district placements. And so there's a school attending children report, and it gives all the different kinds of placements or schools that students are attending within your district, including homeschool students. So there's more data there for you to get a sense of that. And then high school graduation rates for students, all students and students with disabilities and other, subcategories. These are reports that are available. I just happen to find them because these are reports you asked for. But you can always ask your district because this is public information. I just think it should be kind of with an eye on, efficiency. Don't ask for everything. When you need something, ask for it. You can always, hopefully you'll approach, informally, but you can also ask for a public records request on certain items. I know some CPACs are looking for, how many PRS, the problem resolution service complaints were lodged against the district in any given year. And, it's just like, what is the data going to tell you if you only have a piece of it? How many were completed, or successfully, or, resolved, or maybe withdrawn? So, making sure you know what kind of data you want to look at, and try to approach the district on an informal basis first, because you might get a little bit more quicker action and a tease out of the exact data that you want. There's lots of resources around understanding data, and so that you can look. One of them is the condition of education that the Rennie Center produces every single year on the state of Massachusetts. Education gives you that bigger, broader picture. There are DESE reports, research reports, policy briefs, board reports, legislative reports. There's lots out there. So if you're looking for a certain topic, kind of look around, and you can always reach out to DESE and ask, is there information or data or reports on this topic? There's also kidsdata.org. It's a website that speaks to wellness and educational indicators. So there's lots of different types of reports. This is, let's not get bogged down in the data. It's probably out there, but I think what data and kind of this type of information should be driving those conversations within the school district, so that you can look at an issue and have the most reliable information that you have to fuel that conversation and to bring issues to light. So that's the end of the presentation, and I hope you enjoyed CPAC Summer School this year.